นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะเนื่องจากเรามีสื่ออยู่ด้วยวันนี้จะขออนุญาตลูกพูดเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะคะแต่พี่ชมก็จะได้ทั้ง2เวอร์ชันนะยิ่งดีนะคะเพราะว่าเวอร์ชันไทยเนี่ยอาจจะต้องไปสอนต่อในชั้นเรียนนะคะ We are now with the Samaneris, 28 of them who have been ordained and plan to be ordained for 9 days. And we have been in class, we have been talking about the 4 noble truths. We already covered the 2nd noble truth, and I promised them that today I will talk about the 3rd noble truth. That is Nirodha. Nirodha means the end of suffering. People who don't understand about the teaching of Buddhism sometimes criticize Buddhism that the Buddha focused only on suffering. You talk so much about suffering and that Buddhism is very much pessimistic. But indeed, we start with suffering. That is because the Buddha was so genius. He understood that if he started talking about spiritual salvation, nobody would understand. It was he only who actually experienced that spiritual salvation, or what you call nirvana. So therefore, he understands about the people who would be listening to his dharma, talk about something in common. He chose to speak on suffering, which is common to everyone. All of us here sitting in this place, there is no one who has not experienced suffering. ธรรมสรณะอาจจะต้องจดเล็กน้อยนะเพราะว่าจะให้ธรรมสรณะไปถ่ายทอดเป็นภาษาไทยในชั้นนะคะและคนอื่นนะคะเท่าที่ฟังตามได้นะตรงไหนที่อยากจะให้หลวงแม่พูดซ้ำยกมือนะยกมือจะได้พูดซ้ำเราต้องการจะนาช่วยด้วยนะคะตรงไหนที่อยากจะให้พูดซ้ำให้ยกมือ So the Buddha was I think he understood the audience that he cannot start with the end of his discovery. He should start with something in common. So he started with suffering, that which everyone experiences. And then he slowly moving out of suffering. If he taught nothing but suffering, then yes, Buddhism is very much pessimistic. But Buddhism started with suffering, but take us out of suffering. And not only that, the Buddha is very, he emphasizes on experience. So this suffering, if you follow this path, you will come to the passage which is end the suffering. You can end the suffering. So of course we do have suffering, but we can also overcome suffering. And how to overcome suffering is clearly prescribed in the 8 Noble Truths. So when we understand that the teaching of the Buddha is like this, then we start appreciating him more. Now we are talking about the 3rd Noble Truth, that is the end of suffering. The end of suffering, there are actually, it's like a coin. There are always 2 faces of the same coin. You can talk about nirvana. You can talk about anatta, non-self. Whether it is nirvana or it is non-self, it is the same thing. But it is differentiated depending on which side you want to focus. Now I would like to focus on anatta, the concept of non-self. Before talking about anatta, the concept of non-self, we have to realize what was the meaning of atta before Buddhism. Yeah? So we have to understand what was the teaching of atta, or the teaching of Atman. In Sanskrit it is Atman. In Pali it is atta. What was the teaching of Atman before Buddhism? The teaching of Atman, self, is like this, that this self is created by the greater self. This Atman is created by the larger self, which may be called Paramatman. เขียนไม่ถูกประเดี๋ยวลงไปเขียนให้ในชั้นเรียนนะคะ Paramatman. Now, whether it is self, whether it is a small Atman, or whether it is the large self, There is one characteristic. It is permanent. Permanent. It is real. It is unchangeable. This is the concept of Atman. This is the concept of Atta before Buddhism. So you change from one life to another. It's only changing from the outside. But that self, that Atman, carries on through, from this life, through the next life, through the next life, through the next life. That Atman is real. That Atman is unchangeable. And that Atman is permanent, ben niran. Now, Buddhism, the Buddha started talking about Anatman. Anatman is very unique characteristic of Buddhism. If a question comes, what is the unique teaching of Buddhism? You have to say Anatman. You have to say Anatta. Well, some people, even the monks, when I was still teaching at Thammasat University, we were trying to screen the students. And some of the students, this is BA, they were going through entrance examination to study master degree with us. And we asked, what is the characteristic of Buddha's teaching? What is the characteristic of Buddhism? Many of the monks said it's karma. It's a concept of karma, No. The concept of karma is prevalent in India at that time. Other schools also teach about karma. So karma is not unique characteristic of the teaching of Buddhism. The characteristic of the teaching, which is unique, nobody else talk about it, is anatta. Concept of anatta is that characteristic of the teaching of Buddhism. So that's why I emphasize on understanding and appreciating what the Buddha taught us. So what Buddhism denies? Buddhism focus on anatman. Buddhism focus on anatta, is to deny that self, which in Brahmanism says it's real, it's permanent, it is unchangeable. Buddhism denies that. But Buddhism talks about this self sitting here, all the samaneris sitting here, it is real, they are real. They are sitting here, they are real. But that being real, they cannot control. It is not permanent. Just now, I asked them to sit for 3 hours. Already they cannot stand. They have to go down. They have to go to the toilet. So that's why this self, which we take as real, it is not real in the ultimate sense, so to say. It is not permanent because one day I was teaching them just before they came up. They look in the mirror and they thought that they are so beautiful today and they would like to remain beautiful as ever. Cannot. You cannot be beautiful forever because it keeps changing. I don't want to change. Then you have to suffer because you have to change. Right? So this characteristic of self, which is changeable, is opposite to what Brahmanism was trying to say, that if it is atta, then it is permanent, then it is unchangeable, then it is permanent. Whereas Buddhism said, well, this self is real as of now, but it is not permanent. And you cannot control, you cannot have control over it. It has to change. It has to change. It is flux. Flux means keep changing. Yes? So, this characteristic, Buddhism introduced yet another concept. That is the concept of momentariness. Momentariness. It is real only for a moment, for one moment. In Pali it is called kanikavad. It is real in kana. It is real for this particular moment and it keeps changing. But this momentariness, it can be compared to the flow of the river. For example, if you stand in Bangkok, in Thailand we have this very, very major river which is called Chao Phraya. You stand there and look at Chao Phraya, how this river flows. And because it flows continuously, so therefore we take it for granted that this is Chao Phraya River. But actually Chao Phraya River is never the same. It keeps changing. The quality of the water at this particular place is already different from the quality of that particular place. It's the same river. The river continues, the river flows, but the essence which flows in that river is never the same. So there is a saying that a person cannot jump into the same river twice. เราไม่สามารถจะกระโดดลงไปในแม่น้ำสายเดียวกัน2 ครั้งกระโดดลงไปตู้มครั้งหนึ่งนะคะขึ้นมาสบายดีกระโดดลงไปอีกตู้หนึ่งขึ้นมาคันยิบยับเลยเพราะว่าตรงจุดที่เรากระโดดลงไปนะอาจจะมีสารพิษจากโรงงานที่ปล่อยสารพิษออกมา so Buddhism talks about this momentariness but because our mind is crude and can perceive only at the surface so we imagine that this river is the same but the river is never the same. Look again at the fan. The fan actually we have 3 blades. When we stop the fan, you will see the 3 blades. But do you see the 3 blades now? เห็นใบพัดไหมใบพัดของพัดลมเนี่ยเห็นไหมจริงๆแล้วใบพัดลมมีกี่ใบ3 ใบบางที4 ใบบางที2 ใบนะคะแต่เพราะว่ามันวิ่งตามกันอย่างรวดเร็วลูกจึงนึกว่าพัดลมมันกลม same this self because it continues on so rapidly that you imagine that this self is one real self one permanent self but as you see the fan that because of the movement that one blade runs after another so quickly that it causes a circle and you imagine you hold on to the fan that the fan must be round. The fan must be in circle like this. But in fact, when you stop the electricity, you see that the fan actually is composed of 3 blades, 4 blades, right? In the same way, because of our ignorance. You understand just now when we study about these 12 links of dependent origination. Because of our ignorance, because of our avijja, we imagine, we think, we hold on to that this self is real. As soon as you hold on to self as real, what happened? Suffering happens because we hold on to self as real. But when we realize that, oh, this fan, after all it's only 3 blades, after all it's only 4 blades. But because of electricity, that's why the blades runs after another so quickly that you imagine that the fan is actually round, the fan is actually in circle. Yes, you understand this. So this unique characteristic of the teaching of the Buddha make us understand that whatever we hold on to falls under these 3 characteristics, that is dukkha, anicca and anatta. Dukkha is, it cannot stand, it cannot stay as it is. Dukkha means suffering, but dukkha also means it cannot stand like that. It cannot stand as it is. The second one is anicca, it is impermanent. And the third one, anatta, it has no real self. There is no real permanent self which is unchangeable. Understand now? Understand? So I go back to the chart that Venerable Prabhu Suttamanath gave you, that atta on one side and anatta on one side. Atta, self. If it is self, it must be permanent. On this side, anatta, not permanent. If it is dukkha, then anatta, on the anatta side, it will be cannot stay. It cannot stay. And it is changeable. If it is atta, then it is not changeable. But if it is anatta, then it is changeable. Then we come back to ourself, whether this self sitting here, whether it is changeable or not. It is changeable. If it is changeable, then it must be anatta. If it is not changeable, stay permanent, like permanent ink, stay permanently, then it is atta. But none of us here stay permanently. None of us can stay permanently. And not only us, but any composed things. Anything that is composed of, anything that is composed of this table, is it composed of? Of course it is composed of pieces of wood. Pieces of wood that stay together with the nails, right? If I have a big hammer and I bang on this table, the table suddenly is gone. It becomes a heap of wood, pieces of wood, right? So we understand that, okay, this self, as long as the self is sankhara, that which is composed of, it has no real self. It has no reality. It is not permanent. It is changeable. And with this understanding, you can overcome suffering. You look at anything and everything that is composed of. It has that quality of suffering because it cannot stay. It cannot stay. And because we wanted it to stay, we wanted it to be permanent, we wanted it to be like this forever. That's why we suffer. Because it cannot stay as you please. It cannot stay as you wanted it to be. Yes? So that's why we say old age is also suffering. Sickness is also suffering. Right? Shara, Marana, Dukkha Pariteva. Life as we are born into is full of suffering. Because this body is composed of the four elements. And when the four elements do not come together in what you call it, in a proper way, it does not stay and it causes suffering. If there's too much heat in the body, what happens? Then you have fever. Yes, you have fever. Too much water, when you lose too much water, you become dehydrated. You suffer. Okay, so this body must be composed of balanced four elements. When the four elements are not balanced, then we have dukkha, we have suffering. Yes, so the Buddha is one who actually pointed us the way that because we hold on to the self as though this self is real, that's why we have so much suffering. So then he talked about Nirvana, as Nirvana simply, in a very simple way, he explains that Nirvana means that which has things to hold on to the next life. Yes? So there are two parties, you, I, and the other party. The other party may be the next life, and that which binds you to the next birth or to the next existence. So with these three elements, which one can we eliminate? You want to eliminate the relationship between you and the next existence, or you want to eliminate the next existence, or you want to eliminate I. Yes, so Buddhism talks about understanding that this I is, after all, is not permanent. It is changeable, it is not real. And with this understanding, you are not preparing horses for the next birth, which is Nirvana. So in class we will be able to go into detail again about the concept of anatta, the concept of atta, and also the concept of nirvana. Nirvana in Sanskrit, Thai people would say Nibbana, but in English text you often come to see the word nirvana, same word. Okay, so having given you some understanding about the concept of non-self, then we will move on to the concept of the spiritual salvation in Buddhism, which is nirvana. Today, I will end my talk here, but I hope that you will get some understanding. And when you have some understanding, it brings about new attitude you have for life. And when you are adjusted to this new attitude for life, you will be not completely free, but maybe your suffering will be lessened. And that's the idea. That's the idea of being Buddhist. Thank you.